Right then, let's go.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the 2-on-1 Powerchair Football podcast, proudly powered by MK Battery, one of the sport's most dedicated and long-standing partners. MK Battery's influence runs deep in powerchair football, far beyond just providing the batteries that power our chairs. Their continued support has helped shape the sport's foundations, from grassroots initiatives to elite competitions. Their backing ensures powerchair football continues to grow in reach, quality and opportunity, and we're delighted to have them with us for the 24-25 season. In today's episode, we're turning our attention to Gameweek 4 of the 24-25 Optegra Premiership. I'm your host, Ryan Sipple, and today I'll be leaning on the insight and expertise of two brilliant former guests who I've reintroduced back to the podcast, Rosie Hodgson and Owen Swift. I wasn't present during Game Week 4, so I'm very much relying on your eyes and analysis to help bring this episode to life. Before we proceed, how are you both?
I'm good, how are you?
Very well, Rosie. Thank you for coming back on. And Owen?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's good to see you again. We missed you at the last weekend.
I missed it. I very much missed it. I've got some clashes in the calendar as well for Game Week 5, which I'm desperately trying to figure out.
It's not one to be missed, that, I tell you. What a meaty weekend it'll be.
That is an understatement, and no doubt we will explain why that is the case across this episode. But as we always do with these recaps, we will be taking a team-by-team look at all 12 Premiership clubs, assessing the form, standout performers, tactical shifts, and what's at stake as we approach the final weekend of the season, scheduled May 31st and June 1st. And before we jump into that, a huge thank you to Optegra, our National League title sponsor. Their support continues to be a driving force behind the league's growth and rising standards, and I think it's fair to say this season the football across both divisions has been outstanding. Rosie, give me your general thoughts following Game Week 4, both from a player's perspective, very much in the thick of a title challenge, but also from an observer's perspective as one of our most prevalent match commentators.
Match week 4 was absolutely incredible. There was a really high level of play being played throughout the whole weekend. All players played really, really well. There was some results that upset the league standings, definitely at the top and at the bottom, but overall it's been really good. From an Aspire point of view, 5 out of 5 wins, you cannot complain.
Absolutely not. And Owen, you've kind of stepped back from the playing side of things this season to focus more maybe on the coaching and commentary side of things. How have you found it? And also, not only your thoughts on Teesside in the Premiership, who are looking really impressive, but also Teesside Steel in the Championship, who are just on this formidable run.
Yeah, so the to mention the stepping back from playing, the idea was because I felt out my depth a little bit at the Teesside squad now that we're sort of rich with resources and with bringing in new players from, Greg Baxter, absolute brilliant signing, Ed Common last season, players that I could never compete with. So the idea was to go and play for Steel that you mentioned for the season. Then obviously I had an accident in the summer, which still recovering slightly from. So that knocked that on the head a little bit. But I enjoy the coaching so much, probably more than the playing side of it a little bit. I've always liked to be in command of everything, like in day-to-day life as it is. So it's it's me who sometimes I have the knowledge, and I couldn't do it without the quality players that I've got at my disposal, and with Paul and Darren, who often helps out with set pieces. But it's often I can't do what my thoughts are. However, I can tell them what I think is best, and I mean, so far this season it seems to have gone well so far, but there's still 5 very important games to play. So, like we mentioned, Gameweek 5 is going to be an absolute pinnacle of the sport, I imagine.
And very quickly on Teesside still, I'm set to record a championship Gameweek 4 recap, maybe today at some point. You must absolutely love seeing what they're doing as a club and the developments they've shown across the last 12-18 months.
Yeah, well, last season, they barely trained together just due to not being able to get the sports hall, not being able to find time, not being able to get chairs to train in. So as a team, they didn't really train together, and I think that showed on the pitch. I think they were all very disappointed with a 8th place finish last season. But now that they're training together, they can give our first team a run for the money on the good days. They are a good team. They just needed to gel, and obviously the step up from Championship to Premiership. They're at the minute the 3rd, but it is quite a jump. Granted, it is getting narrower, the jump up, as we see Norwich beat Nomads in the playoffs last season. But I think the lads, they're non-stop live and breathe this sport. Certain lads in particular. I'm not going to name names, but the certain lads in particular are absolutely live and breathe the sport, and you can see it on the WFA comments and everything on the YouTube that they often get told off a little bit for a slap on the wrist because they sometimes don't know when to stop. But they absolutely love it, and it's great to see them up there this season.
No, I couldn't agree more. Taking it back to the Premiership, just before we go on to the recap, I also want to get both of your thoughts on the upcoming quarter-final and semi-final showcase at the Derby Arena. Irrelevant of the capacity in which you'll be contributing, both Teesside and Aspire are present for the quarterfinals, and I can say now, being an organiser behind the scenes, I think we've got around about 400 people set to attend, and we want to maximise that, so we're not standing still with 400. We want to make this one of, if not the most attended Powerchair football spectacles that's ever been delivered, and you can factor cups, competitions, World Cups into that conversation as well. Rosie, how excited are you? Because you was present last year, and it's an impressive venue, isn't it?
The setup at the venue is incredible. The venue itself is awesome as well. I was privileged to go back in the summer as well to do my commentary course, and I was in awe of it then. The venue itself is beautiful. Playing on the pitch as well there, it's a similar texture of the surface as to St George's Park, so it gets you in the mind ready to play in that final, maybe, of that FA Disability Cup. But it is super exciting. Aspire have never played Villa Rocket Lions before, so it's going to be an interesting task. We don't really know what we're up against, but our former player Brad is their coach, so it'll be interesting to see if they play similar to us.
I think it's fair to say, just based on the standings of the respective clubs, you've had the most favourable draw, being with Villa Rockets Lions being the one championship team amongst the 8 quarter-finalists. Teesside have got Villa Rockets, so the Premiership and Championship contingent of those two teams will be your quarter-final rivals. But it's going to be amazing. The tickets are free, so we encourage any and everyone to come along, see what Powerchair Football's about, and hopefully it will be the best Powerchair Football spectacle we've ever delivered in this country. So, back to the Premiership recap now. Following a slight deviation, we can talk about the top of the table to begin with. So as we typically do, then we go from 1st through to 12th, talk about each team, how they fared in Gameweek 4, and then cast our thoughts forward. West Brom at top of the table, remain unbeaten. They lead the pack on 45 points, and hopefully this just builds the picture how competitive this title race is. In game week 5, West Brom are to play Aspire, Teesside and Leeds. 3 sides who are very much in the hunt themselves. Teesside sit 3 points back and boast the strongest goal difference in the league, a factor that could prove decisive come the conclusion of game week 5. Aspire are right there too, just 1 point further back from that, on excellent form, as you've already referenced, Rosie. And Leeds, who are currently in second, they have 4 matches to the others' 5 to contest in game week 5. So they will need a perfect finish, and they'll need help elsewhere if they're to steal it. But anything is possible, as we've seen across the 4 weekends, and it's set to be a fascinating finish. At the other end of the table, just to build the context and the picture, the bottom 2 placements in the league, in 11th and 12th, will be automatically relegated at the conclusion of game week 5, and the team in 10th will enter a playoff game against whoever finishes 3rd in the championship. Owen's already referenced the fact that Norwich was successful in beating Nomad Knights last year. They set the precedent for the championship side, potentially trumping the Premiership side of that draw. So when you're looking at Teesside Steel, you're looking at Villa Rockets Lions currently fighting for 3rd in the championship. They will have their eye on the teams that are potentially going to finish 10th. And as we progress through this episode, you will get to understand who is where and what is to come. And lastly, a huge thank you to Jeff Lewis, who always provides the majority of the stats for our episodes, today being no exception. And of course, a massive appreciation to Jack Humphreys, the mastermind behind the WFA Scoreline app. I have no doubt Owen and Rosie will be referencing and using the WFA Scoreline app to help guide their thoughts and opinions for this episode. I can see them both pointing their screens up to the cameras.
Where would we be without it?
We would be lost.
and on that topic, I want to get your thoughts on it, because from my perspective, delivering the podcast as well as commentary, it has been a game changer. Real-time stats, results, fixtures, lineups, everything you could possibly want and more. And this is just the start of the journey. What has it done for your kind of your careers, in terms of referencing and looking at opposition and who's where and what's to come?
It's so professionally done. I think that's the key for me. I think Jack has done such a good job. He sort of took the bull with the horns and gone, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it properly, we're going to do it professionally. The best thing for me, I think, that stands out and that I'll remember for a long time is I was lucky enough to watch one of the cup games, the WFA Cups, because it was played after our regional game between Newcastle and Leeds Dynamos. And I had the job of updating it because Jack Humphreys was playing during the game, and he showed me like how to do it. And there was one of the Newcastle fans were on the side whilst it was playing, and they had I don't know if we're allowed to mention brands, but they had a certain watch that could tell you when things come through, notifications, and they sat there and they went, "Oh, how do they know that there's been another goal? How do they know? Like, have they got a camera here?" And then Rob Crawshaw, who obviously Newcastle coach, was saying, pointed at me and said, "Oh, it's because he's updating it," and it was instantly. But for people who weren't able to be at that match and have a particular interest in football, they could favourite that and get the updates live wherever they are, which for me is just mind-blowing to think. I've been playing for 16 years nearly. I'd have never imagined 16 years ago, if you'd have said we had a sort of Sky Sports-esque app, live score-esque app, whatever, I'd have said shut up.
No, I completely agree. It's elevated how we experience Powerchair football, and it genuinely matches coverage and professionalism you see in mainstream sports. And whether you're playing, commentating or following your team, it brings a level of insight and accessibility, which I think is the important factor, that's never been there before in the sport. We've always had to wait 24, 48 hours with the hope that the results got uploaded onto FA full time, hope they were correct, and then use that to reference your positions and your fixtures. But the real-time element, the accessibility, has been an absolute game changer. Rosie, I no doubt you use it for your commentary, and you're referencing it for this podcast. How have you found it?
Well, just for example, my dad is a tech dinosaur. I absolutely love your dad, but you are a tech dinosaur, and he does not know how to work anything. He has this app on his phone, and he can use it really, really easily. So that just proves how easy it is to use this app. It's absolutely outstanding. The quality of it, the accessibility of it as well. The news on it as well. I like to have a little nose now and again what's going on. But just
not like you, that Rosie.
But, just being able to look at everything. I remember sitting in a bar with my team when I used to play for Norwich many, 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 many moons ago. And like you said, the table didn't used to be updated for 48 hours. We would be sitting there with a piece of paper and pen trying to work out what each team had scored and working it out mathematically, trying to see where we were sitting. So it's a huge game changer. I would be lost without this app.
No, couldn't agree more. Absolute all credit to Jack Humphreys and Alex Dowding. They are putting this sport on the map, not necessarily to the Powerchair community, but to audiences outside, which ultimately are the people and perspectives we're going to have to try and draw into this sport if we want to get it to the level in which we know it can be. So no, full credit on that one. So let's start the recap. As ever, we begin with the team at the top of the table, and as was the case following game week 3, that happens to be reigning champions West Bromwich Albion, which I'm sure you two are not too happy with, being very fierce title challengers to them. Owen, give me your thoughts on West Brom across game week 4.
Yeah, there's always find a way, and I think that's the key. I think that shows the absolute characteristics that Chris installs on all of his teams, because let's not forget they've had so many changes at that club, but they're consistently top performers. Where whether was it 4 changes this season, maybe more, at the beginning of the season, but they always seem to be up there, win the league, whether it be win the league or win the cup, win whatever. They always seem to be up there, and they consistently find a way at the end. I remember watching Sevenoaks, and I've never been so frustrated, because Sevenoaks played absolutely unbelievable that game in the West Brom, against West Brom, and it was brilliant to watch. It was a great game, but as a team that's contending with West Brom and need them to drop points, when they scored at the last 2 minutes, I looked at the Donahue family. I was sat with them and having a laugh, and I said, there was 5 minutes left on the clock, and I said, give it 2.5 minutes and there'll be a goal. The clock struck 2.5 minutes, and then I can't remember who scored it, whether it be Dylan or what, but I remember seeing that, and I didn't stick around too long after the final whistle, because it was just, they always find a way. It's not even luck neither. It's pure determination, pure characteristics that Chris installs on all of his teams, and absolutely fair play to them. They deserve to be up there purely because of that, and obviously on top of that, the quality that they have, and the amount of dedication that Chris puts into his coaching and the other lads put into their playing is, I strongly believe that English football, Powerchair Football, wouldn't be where it is without Chris Gordon.
No, that's an understatement. I'll get on to Chris in just a little bit because I have a few points to raise when it comes to him. But you mentioned the fact that 4 of their players are new. Obviously, you need to take into consideration that Brad Bates and Barris have been there, have done it, have won titles, but they've rejoined the club. But you have to take into consideration the players that have departed and the quality of those players. Obviously... Go on.
Like the main bulk of the team was Marcus Harrison. He was like a top player. It's like taking sort of Ronaldo out of Portugal. You know, it was a massive hole to fill. And I'll admit, as a someone who believed that we could be up there again fighting against them, when I seen or heard that Marcus was even maybe leaving, I was licking my lips thinking, well, I tell you what, we could be in with a chance here. That, you know, but it's been so like competitive, still, and like I wouldn't say that I wasn't expecting it, because I fully was, because I know that what characteristics I said before that Chris installs. But yeah, when we think of the players that have left and everything, it's pretty incredible to see them doing so well.
On Marcus, you're right to reference that and compare it to Ronaldo out of Portugal. He supported and had 46 goal contributions in the league last season. So you take that out of any team and questions start to be asked as to how they'd adapt. And also, if you add that to any team, they almost come an automatic title contender. When we get onto Greenbank, we'll reference that. But also, you've got the fairly prolific Valentino Zegarelli, who departed. So there's a big shift. Rosie, give me your thoughts on West Brom, because as Owen has pointed out, they just found a way. The professionalism is something to be commended.
Yeah, 10 points this weekend they secured. They had a 2-2 draw against Newcastle United, which when Aspire, my team, had their talks of what to expect for the weekend, we said teams will drop points around us. And that is a game we did expect. I was surprised by a 1-0 win against Sevenoaks. I thought the team just lacked something. I couldn't put my finger on it, as they struggled to get past third gear. There's just something not right. But like you said, they have, I don't want to say it, but they have scraped through this weekend with 1-0 wins and a draw.
And on that topic, just 5 goals across Gameweek 4 of the competition, which is their lowest return since the final weekend of 21-22, where they scored 5 goals as well. Beyond that, the last time they were that
vulnerable?
I wouldn't necessarily say vulnerable, but just they weren't as prolific as we expect them to be. And you'd have to go back to the final weekend of 2012-13, where they only scored 3 goals to reference a point of comparison for West Brom, which shows how prolific they are and have been so for 10, 12, 13 years. I think it's pragmatism, it's professionalism, and irrelevant of how they play, how many goals they score. I'm sure the ultimate stat is the points and the wins column. And if they come away with 3 points, even if they are by 1 goal margins, irrelevant of who they're facing, obviously 1-0 against Middlesbrough, that's a result that Middlesbrough will be absolutely delighted with, a team that's challenging towards the bottom and fighting for survival. But ultimately, we're still referencing and talking about West Brom at top of the table, and the title is still very much in their hands. They've got some very, very tough games in Game Week 5, where they face Teesside, Nottingham, Newcastle, Leeds and Aspire. So should they come out of them unscathed, they will have a second successive National League Premiership trophy, and they'll have a sixth star above their logo. So you can't complain too much. We have to talk about Dylan Kelsall, the anchor of the team, stepping up his level, no doubt, with a hope of breaking into Adam McAvoy's F Nations Cup squad. 19 goals, 9 assists. Brad Bates as well, seamlessly reintegrated himself back into the team. 11 goals, 18 assists, and both of them will be key components in the final weekend of the league and the latter stages of the cup. So it's all to play for. I said that I would quickly go back onto Chris Gordon. You're right to reference the influence he has on the coaching, Owen. But this season, I think I've seen a different side to him from a playing perspective as well. I think the acquisition of Lucas Christa has given him a little bit more flexibility and freedom in attack, and I would also be doing him a huge disservice if I didn't spotlight his historical achievement a few weeks prior to Gameweek 4, where he travelled to Australia, as did Brad Bates and Abigail Bolt, for the Australian National Club Championships, and he was successful in supporting Melbourne City Powerchair to what I believe is their first ever national championship.
It is indeed.
Within the 12-game competition, he got 12 goals, 13 assists. So he was bringing some impressive form into Gameweek 4 of the competition. And if that wasn't enough, a few days ago he was also announced as West Bromwich Albion's Disability Player of the Year. So if you talk about trailblazers, he is right there.
And in the West Brom Hall of Fame, I believe, now.
Yeah, West Brom Hall of Fame at the back end of 2024. So as an England fan, I'm just hoping he can impart that influence in their defence of the 2025 F Nations Cup later this year. So that trophy returns to St George's Park. But all very impressive. Congratulations to West Brom. We've previewed results and performances in Game Week 4. We've also cast our thoughts forward to Game Week 5, where you have arguably the toughest weekend of the title challenges. So if you're going to do it, you're going to have to do it in style. And I have no doubt two people staring at me on my screen will have something to say or do.
I'm not leaving that spot at all. Put it that way. 48 hours camp out, that's what that's going to be. I'm not leaving it.
It's going to be amazing. And for anyone wanting May 31st and June 1st, Game Week 5 at the Lee Westwood Sports Centre. So, next in the standings, we have Leeds Chariots. 18 games played, 14 games won. They have an accumulation of 43 points, so 2 behind West Bromwich Albion. But as we've already alluded to, they have played a game more than all of the other title challengers, so it's not necessarily in their hands. They're going to need results to go in their favour if they're going to go on to secure what will be a historic lifting of the Premiership. For so long now, it's been West Brom or Aspire. I think you'd have to go back to 17-18 or maybe 16-17 to see another club, and that being Northern Thunder, lift the Premiership trophy. How have you two found Leeds Chariots this season? Because their consistency is what's impressed me most. They came flying out the traps in game weeks 1 and 2, but I didn't know if they necessarily had what it takes to go the full 22 league games and still be in consideration.
Do you know what? It is so refreshing seeing them up the top of the table. Like you said, it's normally Aspire, West Brom. I'm not going to complain about that, but you know, it's so refreshing seeing other teams up there as well. We said back in December on this podcast, it's going to be a 6-horse race until the end weekend for that title, and it's not over until the last game on June 1st. But for Leeds, they've done an absolutely stellar weekend. They had 4 wins, 4 important wins, shall I say, especially over Villa Rockets, who are very defensive. They were able to score 2 goals past them, and also against Sevenoaks again, another 1-0 win against Sevenoaks, which is absolutely fantastic.
What are your thoughts, O?
Yeah, the Leeds are not only are they a good team, but off the pitch. I like to think of this sport a little bit like Formula One. You know, we're competitive, but we're quite often friends outside of it. And I like to look at F1 as a comparison to that. You know, they have teams that are against each other, but they're not isolated from each other. You see them doing podcast interviews together, sort of thing, and knocking about off the track, off the pitch, whatever. But yeah, Leeds one. I mean, you shouldn't have favourites, but off the pitch, they're certainly, whether it's because they're northern like myself or what, it's a bit of favouritism that way. But they are good lads, be it the parents, carers, be it the players. But they always have time for you, and like Rosie said, it's so nice to see a team that's not often in the mix. I mean, don't get me wrong, 5th place last year, still a very respectable finish, and not sure how they did the year before that, but they're quite relatively like new to it. You know, we've got Aspire, West Brom, sort of Nottingham, who have all been knocking around for a long time now, and it's great to see a new team that's fighting for the title, and they haven't took the foot off the gas. Maybe we looked at in particularly not Gameweek 4 but Gameweek 3. I must admit we went into it as a Teesside point of view thinking Leeds will drop points here, this is where sort of Leeds will be not found out, but sort of where the test will be for Leeds, because they did have some you know, can't really say easy because no game's easy, but on paper they had some not as tough games, but until that moment, but they came out, you know, fairly unscathed from it, and if anything, it's taught them a few things or two, so one or two things. So yeah, I really like Leeds, and I love seeing them up there.
Yeah, it's something I get pulled up on a fair bit on the podcast, of saying easy games, easier games, on paper, terms that you're just so used to when referencing Powerchair Football or the Premiership, because there was a slight divide between the top teams and the lower ranked teams. But as shown from West Brom, Middlesbrough 1-0 and other results that we've seen across both divisions, that is no longer a factor. You're right to reference the fact that, relatively speaking, they are new to the Premiership. I think them and Newcastle were both promoted during the short season we had as a result of COVID. And Teesside as well. So that's, in terms of full seasons competing within the Premiership, that's only 4. And typically any teams that come up from a lower division, the Championship in this case, it always takes you 2, maybe 3 seasons, assuming you don't get automatically relegated, to assert yourselves within that division.
They also had a change of coach as well in the summer. We've seen Paul Gorman there pretty much since the start, and Paul's an absolute top-notch bloke. I love him. I think he's absolutely fantastic.
Lovely.
He's done so well for himself with you know the technical terms, but the England pathway, you know, he's quite involved on that. He had a brief spell over in Ireland for one of the Nation Cups, and I'm not sure what went on, but it turned out that Russ now does it on his own pretty much with the coaching side of things at Chariots. And it's always risky. It's a sort of, we know that we do well, but how could it go with someone else? And then luckily, well, not even luckily, but thankfully for Leeds and for those who are affiliated to Leeds, it's a roll of the dice that's really benefited them this year.
Yeah, on the point of Paul, fantastic coach, amazing person, we coach alongside one another on the Regional Emergent Talent Programme. He's now part of the National Emergent Talent Programme. I think you will both know, because you're both present at the majority of weekends, irrelevant of the division. They are tolling, they are taxing, and he's decided to take a step back from National League side of things. He's still very much influential and a part of Leeds as kind of a parent club. But you're right to highlight Russ Rigby coming in to take over the reins from a coaching perspective. From a playing point of view, they're the only team that hasn't seen any players come in or go out. And this is something I referenced in the podcast of Gameweek 3 with Greg Baxter. You would think if this is a team that has been challenged mid-table, 5th finish, 6th place finish, that they would maybe need to add to that in order to push on to that next level. And their quality has never been in question. I have to emphasise that. We know how good Dan Rigby is. We know how good Lewis Harris is. We'll get onto Jack Maxwell in a little bit. But the consistency needed to win or challenge for a title is a huge step up to a 5th or 6th place finish. And that's what's impressed me the most. They've had to change things tactically rather than from a personnel perspective. And it's paying off. And irrelevant if they can go and take that step forward and be crowned champions, they have to step back and commend the effort of this season and build on it next season. But really exciting. They're, of course, still present in the Cup. So there's still a lot to play for. I said I'd go on to Jack Maxwell. He has hit form that I haven't seen since his Northern Thunder days. And their Northern Thunder days where he was getting plenty of service from the likes of Ed Common and Sam Smith. 23 league goals. Is it 23 league goals? But either way, it's paired with Dan Rigby's assists, for which he has 23 as well. Give me your thoughts on that pair, because they're just hitting a rhythm.
I think it's key that you mentioned him when he was at Thunder, and he's naturally got an eye for that goal. You know, he knows where it is, and he's not sort of one of those players who is told, you know, your only job is to score the goals. He does help out a lot in breaking up other player from other teams and everything, and he's such a nice lad from a nice family. His brother's just started doing some refereeing, actually, which is fantastic to see, a young lad coming into it, doing the refereeing, because we are short of referees, and Leeds area is well, there is no referees at the minute. Been part of the setup for the North East Regional League. It's so difficult, and it has been for many years, to find a ref from Leeds, and it's great for him to do that. But Jack Maxwell, to not go off the subject at all, but the Jack Maxwell did it for Thunder. Now he's doing it for Leeds, which, you know, is by no means a lesser club of what Thunder was, and with lesser players, but he's doing it there, which shows that it is him that is the goal scorer. Dan Rigby, absolute, again, brilliant lad. Keeps himself to himself a lot more than what others do, maybe. But he is a top-notch lad. He can make his chair do things that I look at and I think, how on earth can you do that with that much control? Like, and it going that fast, and it whips it round, and you see his hair going all over the gaff, and you think, like, wow, like, how does he do that? And everything, and to get, was it 16 assists so far? Did you say, for Dan Rigby?
I think he's got 23.
23, so yeah, it must have been that I'd looked before the weekend. But yeah, to have 23 assists in the Prem is crucial as to why Leeds are up there.
Should Leeds go on to lift the trophy, and there's a lot of football to be played to determine that, are you taking either Lewis Harris or Dan Rigby in your England squad for the Ep Nations Cup? Rosie?
I would be taking Lewis Harris.
He's very unique, isn't he? I mean, It was almost a shock when Lewis Harris wasn't named in the team of the weekend and or standout player of the weekend following Gameweek 4, because he had the historical achievement of getting back-to-back standout players of the weekend. What is it about Lewis Harris? How do you describe his game, his tactics, his technical ability? Because he has just hit a new level this season.
He has. It feels like he's gone away and watched an enormous amount of Powerchair Football. That's honestly how it feels like. It feels like he's swatted up and literally he can read every ball when he is on the pitch. He can tell the way that play is going to move. And it reminds me of the way Ed Common can read a game. It's just incredible to see Lewis Harris have such a poignant position in his team when he's a goalkeeper, which usually a goalkeeper is the forgotten player, but they've adapted this 4-out kind of system. He's able to go in and out of position, be able to play in the middle, supply his wingers with balls. So I think he's done really, really well this season.
No, I echo all of that, and it's something we've referenced several times on the podcasts. September is the Ep Nations Cup. England will be defending their crown, and if you're Adam McAvoy, you've got one of the hardest jobs in whittling that talent pathway program pool of players down to just 8 players. I know I'm present on several layers of the England pathway. The concentration of talent at the top, I think you could pick between 10 or 15 players that have all had sensational campaigns in the Premiership that will hope to break into that squad. Lewis Harris is absolutely in that conversation, and should they go on to take that step further in the League or Cup, he will be a key part of that. It's important to also reference and commend the role that Jack Britton does in the Leeds Chariots team. You spoke about kind of the fluidity and Lewis Harris advancing up the court, but knowing that it's in a position of strength and he's covered in his defensive actions. I think Jack Britton quietly goes under the radar and does a job that allows him to express himself in attack, as is the case with several players across the division. And it's why we wanted to bring in the Unsung Hero Award, because whilst several players in the top of the assists and the top of the goal scoring charts will get the praise and the plaudits, there is some fundamental cogs in systems that help it become what it is. I'm just trying to research how many goals, if any, Jack Britton has scored across this season. I don't believe he's registered a single goal. So it shows that he's not in the headlines, he's not at the top of the charts, but he is fundamental to the way that Ross Rigby plays his football.
He's scored 1. He's 49th currently on the scoreline app.
You're absolutely right. 1 goal, 1 assist. So yeah, not a player that's anywhere near the top of them charts. But you take him out of the squad, I don't think it works quite as effectively as it does. So huge congratulations to him, to Leeds Chariots. They're still in the title race. They're 2 points off of West Bromwich Albion. And whilst the title isn't necessarily in their hands, having played a game more, they do play West Brom and Aspire in game week 5. So whether or not they will be crowned champions, they will play a part in whoever is crowned champion. So it's really compelling. Next in the stand-ins, in third position, we have Teesside. 17 games played, 42 points, the most prolific goal-scoring outfit in the division with 60 goals across their 17 games. Owen, you are very much affiliated to Teesside. Give me your thoughts both on Game Week 4 and the season as a whole.
Game Week 4 was a real test of character, I think. I think we, going into it, we sort of, and again, I don't like to say it, but easy games on paper. I'll be getting shot after this podcast, I'm sure. We looked at it, and going into it, we had sort of one or two games that we thought may be more difficult than the others. But it sort of nearly stung me on the backside because the Nottingham game proved to be the most difficult across the weekend. We didn't think that we would get, well, I know deep into it from past experiences, we often struggle to break down a side that is so defensively set up. You know, we saw us to draw to Nomad Knights last season, a 0-0, which we were hoping to be challenging for the title, the champions of England, and they ended up getting relegated, which was sort of embarrassing on our side of things, but a massive result for Nomads. And we thought that Nottingham, sort of 5 minutes from the end, we were thinking, oh, hang on a minute, this could be another Nomads. But it shows how much we've come on, I think, this season to last, with how new signing of Greg maybe has benefited us a little bit. I know he didn't really play much in that game, but the new signing of Greg and me being able to concentrate on and dedicate more time to coaching has maybe helped us and a lot. And obviously Darren, I want to give him a massive shout out because he has, other than like taking Tyler to the games, he has no sort of much affiliation to it. You know, he loves Teesside, but he also helps out on the coaching side of things. And I think when you're up the top watching, you see a completely different game, or you maybe not a complete different game, but you see certain aspects that maybe us as players and coaches don't really see. And I think his input can sort of guide us in ways that maybe me and Paul don't see at the time. So yeah, I want to give him a big shout out, and as I do all the parents and carers at Teesside, because they do their job fantastically. But as a season as a whole, we're up there, and it's in our hands at the end of the day. If we win all of our games, we are champions of England, and it's in our hands at the minute. But it is difficult as to whether we can do it. It's such a tight pack at that top four, because it is top four. Maybe even sort of Newcastle have slipped off a little bit, but the top five this year has been such. I'd have enjoyed it a lot more if I was a neutral, don't get me wrong, but it's been such a good season for the neutral, for people looking from the outside in. But for Teesside, I'm very happy with how we've coped this season.
As you should be. You're right to raise all of those points, and I can say from a mutual perspective that I'm absolutely loving this title race. You said that Newcastle have dropped off slightly. We'll reference them in a bit more detail. But approaching game week 5 of the competition, just 4 points separate first and fourth. So it can be decided by a goal, a strike, a tactical switch up, a substitution. And
no pressure on me then, eh?
On the topic of Teesside, I think, and this is where I want to bring Rosie in, your first game, both of your first games in game weeks 5 is against one another. So Teesside versus Aspire, Court B, 9:30 kickoff. Multiple things we can delve into. Obviously I will never be able to talk from the perspective of a player. I can, from a commentary perspective, say that it always is a challenging fixture, the first one of a weekend. Players are travelling up either the morning of or the evening prior, and getting up to speed and tempo and ensuring that team chemistry can sometimes take a game or two to get underway. So if and where possible, you're going to want to avoid playing one another in the early kickoffs. Rosie, your thoughts on Teesside and also them early kickoffs. How do you find them?
I'll tell you now, an early kickoff is my worst enemy. I'm always at the venue anyway for at least 9 a.m, sometimes 8:30, because I come and help with the commentary. But Teesside have had an impeccable run this season. I'm just looking through their past results, and in game week 2, Teesside played Newcastle United and drew 0-0. But then last weekend they played Newcastle again and won 3-2. There's been so much building blocks into the Teesside's team, especially with the additions of Greg. It's helped the team so much. I think because he brings an element of playing from Sevenoaks and bringing those ideas into a team that's already got good ideas and good formation. You're able to work in his ideas, and he's also a commentator, so he's watching a lot of Powerchair Football. He's able to bring so many ideas into that Teesside team, and it's just shown how well they have done this season. The game in game week 5, 9:30 a.m. is going to be very interesting, because the last time we went in and faced Teesside, I came on this podcast a few days after, was a sourpuss because we lost 3-0. Teesside have a way of being very sneaky, and we came into the Teesside game in December with a game plan, like fully ready, and it just went out the window after the first goal. We kind of looked at each other like, what's going on? Like, we just didn't get it. It just shows like how much of an input Owen and Greg have had on the team this season, and Paul Pearson as well, and it's made such a great impact on Teesside.
You say that through gritted teeth, though. Rosie.
Just a bit.
I think you're right to highlight the added benefit of commentary, and it's something that I've absorbed so much Powerchair Football over the last few years. It gives you a really fantastic insight into players, into tactics, into patterns, and I can only reference it when maybe talking about the team next time they play. But if you're a player or a coach, how that then influences your setup, it's been an absolute game changer. We talk about the Scoreline app as being a real significant landmark in the sport. The increase in the prevalence of streaming and commentary has done so as well. And as says, it allows players and coaches to spot the patterns, to break down key moments and reflect on decisions, both good and bad, whether it's positional play, refining setups, or identifying areas you can improve. That all comes from absorbing and watching Powerchair Football. So if you're a young aspiring player, whether you come in person or you watch on the streams, I really encourage you to watch as much as possible, because it can become an essential part of developing both individual and team performances. And if you're talking about re-watching games or watching games live, there's few better to do that than Teesside. The attacking, free-flowing football they play is absolutely incredible. Team of the weekend for Game Week 4 saw both Tyler Reeve and Ed Common feature. Ed Common was voted the standout player of the weekend, which is probably no less than he deserves. Such an influential player. We referenced it in the Game Week 3 podcast. Ed has been present at every single National League season since its inception in 2006. To produce world-class performances consistently across nearly 20 years is nothing short of a miracle, really. No matter what walk of life, no matter what sport or hobby or discipline you choose to follow, staying the top of something for 20 years is and has to be given credit. And like we've referenced several times, with the Ep for Nations Cup coming up, no doubt Ed will be a fundamental part of that if we are to go on and secure the trophy. Just quickly before we move on, Rosie referenced it, Owen, that 3-2 victory over Newcastle. Did you watch it?
The Newcastle game?
That's the one.
Yeah, I was coaching for it. Yeah, I should hope I was watching it. But
give me your. I don't necessarily know the ways in which teams scored or the patterns. Was it?
We went. I believe we went 1-0 up. You tested my memory now. I can't remember what I had for Teenham and what I did a couple of weeks ago. No, but I believe we went.
Is it as competitive as the result suggests? Is what I'm going for.
It was certainly as competitive, maybe a little bit more competitive than what the results suggest. I know at one point we were 3-1 up, which would have done Newcastle no justice as to how they performed against us. They were on it. I think we were slightly off it. We weren't at our very best, but that's just my high standards maybe. But the Newcastle they were maybe a little bit disappointed, and would have been if it was 3-1. I think justice wouldn't have been served, and if it was 3-1. However, I think maybe we were the better team on the day. Certainly on compared to when Rosie mentioned the 2-2 earlier on in the season, which his points dropped, but we weren't on it that day. But this one felt a lot better. However, Newcastle they set up good. It was a good game to watch, I think, as a neutral. However, I do believe maybe it's a bit of favouritism with the score result, but the one against Aspire was a fantastic game to watch for Teesside, and the one that we lost 4-2 earlier in the season against West Bromwich Albion was fantastic. I do, before we move on, want to just briefly for 2 seconds go back to what you were saying about the streaming side of things and how it develops young kids and young people new to the sport. I think we've obviously got a player that a lot of people have heard of, Mitch Tinkler. He is at an age, when he first started, even a few years ago, that was a similar age to when I first started, and I would never ever imagine being at his level when I first started. I mean, now he's suppressed me by about 3 years ago he suppressed me. He totally came on leaps and bounds, but he has been by far at a level that is better than when I first started at the age of sort of 11. But I believe that a lot of that is down to the streaming side of things. So I'd like to thank Alex Dowden and yourself and Nick Woodward who brought that in, because we have 3 sessions a week when it's National League weekend. The build up to, we have 2 sort of physical training sessions and then 1 theory, where we go through a few of our games, a few of the opponent's games, and we analyse what's gone on there. So without that, I believe that the players wouldn't be where they're at now, and England possibly wouldn't have a for European trophy without the streaming side of things.
No, it's been a game changer for many different reasons, both from an exposure point of view, introducing the sport to new audiences, which ultimately is how we grow, to use it to aid your performances, and on the topic of Mitch, a perfect person and a player to reference, having an absolutely incredible season. I know how Powerchair Football mad he is, and regular listeners of the podcast and on my commentary will know that it's still to be decided, but currently he's my young player of the season. There's the levels of consistency he's showing, and he's in an attacking three with Ed Common and Tyler Reeve. If you're not good enough, you'll be found out almost immediately. He's thriving and sometimes outperforming those two players, and that takes some doing at his age. It is worth noting, at the conclusion of Gameweek 5 of the competition, we will of course be opening the award voting for end of season, where you can vote for your player, young player, head coach, team and fantasy team. And Mitch Tinkler will be one of the considerations for young player of the season. We have altered the criteria slightly for the 2025 awards. So whereas years gone by, you had to be 16 or under at the start of your respective competition, it's now 18 or under at the start of the competition. So there's 19 considerations and 19 names on the shortlist for Young Player of the Season. But he'll definitely be in contention. I have no doubt about that. But he's having a great season, as our T-side. It's in their hands, as you've said. I'm sure Aspire, West Brom and Leeds will all have something to say about it. But it just shows how tight this title race is, and it's going to come down to razor thin margins. It's one missed opportunity, a lapse in concentration, or even a tactical tweak could be the difference between lifting the trophy and falling short. And that's why we love it. I know you two will be nervously in amongst that title race, but from a mutual perspective, you are producing and providing the most incredible advert for the sport, for the league, and Powerchair Football in this country. So keep doing what you're doing and make sure it goes down to the very last game.
Oh, you know it will. You know it will.
I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I don't know where I'd be putting my chips, because I can see strengths in all of your teams and not many weaknesses. I don't know if you're Aspire, for instance, how you're going to exploit West Brom or Teesside. If you're Leeds, how you're going to reverse kind of the results in that game in hand to go in your favour. It's all to be decided on May 31st and June 1st, but that's why we do what we do. Let's progress nicely down the standings. Next up, Aspire Powerchair Football Club, 17 games played, 41 points, so 1 behind Teesside, 2 behind Leeds Chariot and 4 behind West Brom. Rosie, you're having an incredible season. I hope you are processing that and acknowledging that, because your levels in Game Week 3 particularly, I wasn't present in Game Week 4, so I can't speak from that. These are new levels for you that I've seen. You're really stepping up, and Aspire are kind of adapting to life without Brad Bates. And we referenced at the top of the episode how the departure of Marcus Harrison for West Brom could have been so detrimental to the way they play, and adjusting for that and compensating for that could have taken a season or two to get used to. I think it's the same with Aspire losing Brad Bates. But you've stepped up your level. John Dixon has seen a seamless integration into the side. How have you found it from a playing point of view? And I have no doubt, knowing you, knowing John and others, the ultimate aspiration, the non-negotiable aspiration, is ensuring that you lift that trophy on June 1st.
Firstly, thank you. It's actually quite nice to get compliments about the playing, because it's been a very rocky, I'd say, 2 seasons that have been emotionally very up and down. So coming into this season, I've told myself, this is my season to really put a stamp on my name and, prove myself. I feel like I need to prove myself. So I feel it's working. So I'm going to try and carry on that form. But, Aspire, we've been, I'd say, we've, it's hard to explain. We've gone in with obviously losing Brad, and we've had to regroup over the summer. It was very unexpected losing Brad as well to West Brom. So when it came to August and we were like, okay, we like to have a team of 8. Let's do some kind of trials. And John Dixon came along and he worked out really well on our team. He's a very, very good player. He still has a lot to learn as well, but he is a very good player. Looking at, the past weekend that we've had the best result, I guess, out of what we could have. 5 wins. 3 wins on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. 5 wins was phenomenal. We just had to pull our weight as players and make sure we can still get to those high levels of the Premiership trophy. But also we're casting our look onto the FA Disability Cup and also the Clubs World Cup coming up in June. It's a very busy time starting now.
Absolutely. You've summarised it perfectly. A faultless weekend for Aspire. I think the most notable stat for me, Dan McClellan secured his first ever hat-trick. And when Jeff Lewis first said that to me prior to Gameweek 4, saying that Dan McClellan has never scored a hat-trick, I would have said not a chance. He scored, that was his 68th senior goal, and he's prolific and he's scored a brace on many occasions. But to now say that he scored a hat-trick in the Premiership will no doubt give him confidence. He's another that is currently part of the England setup and will have aspirations of being there in September. You're right to reference John Dixon, featured in the Team of the Week, and I think that shows his development as a player. I don't recall him ever being present for any of his former teams, so I think his versatility has helped Aspire. I think he's played in pretty much every position possible across the 4 weekends at one point, and that will help John Balding with his decision making and will ensure players such as yourselves, such as Dan and Tom, are kept on your heels, because if there is lapses in concentration or performances, he can shift it up now, which will only help you in the long run.
The beauty of having 8 in our team is, we're able to put like John Dixon in all of those positions as well, and we're able to say like give John Bolden a break, because let's be honest, he's closer to retirement than he is the start, bless him. But it looks good, I think, having a team of 8, and it's proving well.
I can say now, I will not let John Bolden retire until he brings that World Cup trophy home. That's a non-negotiable. So
I agree.
Assuming he can secure it in Argentina next year, then he can sail off into the sunset and say goodbye. But if not, he's waiting until whenever the next World Cup is beyond that. So we could have 5-6 years more of Mr. Bolden competing at the very top. Owen, give me your thoughts on Aspire. Formidable weekend, as mentioned, and they are right on the heels of Teesside.
Yeah, they are. I know Rosie mentioned a little bit about they had a game plan for the Teesside game a couple of weekends ago, but we also had a game plan going into it, which is no surprise. That's how sort of tactics work and everything. But this last weekend showed that Aspire has still got what it takes to be at the top, and they're by no means a force that shouldn't be reckoned with. They going into it, the game against West Brom, they absolutely took the game at West Brom, which, no disrespect to Aspire, but was a shock for me, because we were playing at the same time. And I think I watched more of that game, I must admit, than my own team. But to watch it was incredible. Dan McClellan was playing like I'd never seen him play before. It was fantastic to see him against. And like you mentioned, I'll back your comment up about Rosie. I don't want her to get too big; she won't fit out the door. Like, so we might not see her at the next weekend. So, but Rosie, yeah, you have stepped up a lot this season and showed what a player you are, because you can do it, and it's often, like, I'm not saying that it's been done in the past, but to live in the player's shadows, other players to be shielded by them, but it's not that. It's to be used to your full potential. You can do it, and it showed that in the season so far. Last weekend, they were fantastic. The results showed that. So yeah, I think definitely game week 5 we've got them. I believe you've got West Brom too. So it's going to be tough, but it wouldn't be football if it weren't like that.
Thank you, I appreciate your comments.
How much of your confidence this season, Rosie, comes from that Champions League success in Paris?
I don't know.
Or is it kind of, as that chapter's closed now, is focusing on the here and now? I don't think it's a coincidence that your levels have risen to what we're seeing off the back of what was such a historic achievement for Aspire. But beyond that, how does the level of competition compare from what you played in Paris?
I mean, when we were in Paris, I personally didn't play in the final, but a lot of the other players on that pitch who did play the final do feel the same as myself. I personally, when I was in Paris, I felt like, okay, if we do well here, then I need to believe in myself more. I'm very self-critical of how I play and in my confidence as well. And sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, more or less doesn't. But Paris has helped shift my confidence, I think, a lot, looking back now. We came away and I was like, oh my God, I'm a European champion. I play for the best club in the world. I'm the only female, alongside Sally McNeil, to win this trophy. It's insane.
No, it was a pleasure to watch, and it was just interesting to see if at all that influences your results. On the topic of Aspire, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time in what I'm watching, you're sharing the responsibility in terms of creativity and goal scoring. If you just reference the 24-25 stats, Dan McClellan leads the way with 13 goals, John Dixon has 10, and yourself and John Bolden both have 9 goals apiece. So there isn't a huge discrepancy between goal scoring amongst your kind of attacking players. You're sharing the responsibility, and that's proven to be really successful. We've already said it when referencing Teesside, that first game in game week 5 could be so key for momentum, and I think should one of you or Teesside secure the 3 points, the winner of which will surely go on to challenge towards and have ultimate aspirations of that title. Whoever loses, should there be a loser, probably dips out of consideration. Still to play for, but to have that almost title decider so early on could be a good thing or could be a bad thing. But either way, it's going to be compelling viewing. And
so what you're saying now could be at home by 12:30 on the Saturday afternoon. That'll be lovely. That I'll enjoy that.
Well, let's play hypotheticals. Should Aspire win that, they'll go up to 44 points. So they'll go one behind West Brom. Whilst Teesside will still be on 42 points, it will then not be in their hands. So just based off the table and Teesside having a more favourable goal difference, you have to say Aspire need it more than Teesside. But that's only relative when you're referencing you two specifically. I think the non-negotiable expectation and hope will be to secure 3 points. And anything other than that probably means that you have a mountain to climb for the title. So it could be very, very interesting. Let's just put it that way. But we'll cap off Aspire there. A great weekend. and all to play for in game week 5. Just beyond that Teesside game, they play Newcastle, Leeds, Villa and West Brom. So an incredibly tough run of fixtures, not to mention the fact that 5 fixture weekends are always really grueling, both physically and mentally. So you're going to have to stay alert and at the top of your games if you're to dethrone West Brom. Next in the standings in 5th, we have Newcastle United Foundation, dipped slightly out the title race. I mean, there is still potential for them to make up some ground, but they're now 4 points adrift of Aspire in 4th. So they've played 17, 37 points. It was a good weekend for them. We've already spoken about the Teesside result and how close that was in the end. They also ground out a 2-2 draw with West Brom, one of the very few teams to actually secure points against the reigning champions. Give me your thoughts, Owen, on Newcastle. I don't think it's unfair to say they've dipped slightly and they're probably the outsiders for the title now. But when you're referencing them in the wider context, it's been a fantastic season for them, which they'll no doubt build upon next.
Yeah, I think it seems to be finishing 3rd. The season before seems to be the killer for the fixtures. It just... I don't know why, but it's just how it is. We did it, Teesside did it exactly the same last season, but Newcastle are a fantastic team. Getting Ethan Fisher a few years back is been phenomenal for them. He's the key to how they play. Granted, he plays a lot different to how your usual players would. But he's definitely got that, even though he's not from the northeast, he's got that northeast sort of in his blood, kind of no nonsense. Looking back at the results, it was a very close game against Greenbank. I know Marcus Harrison's dad, Dave, he had his feelings known at the end of that, which was quite entertaining. Sat with him, but yeah, the result against Teesside 3-2 is not one to be ashamed by, but massive point against West Brom is like shows that their level is up there.
Yeah, I spoke about the razor thin margins. Had they managed to get 3 points against West Brom, we're having a very different conversation. Had they managed to not suffer defeat against Teesside, it's a very different conversation, and that's the consistency we talk about, and that's why you have to again put praise on Leeds Chariots, who are just producing consistency week after week, and irrelevant of how talented your players are, putting that in practice and making sure that you're getting 3 points or a steady accumulation of points to ensure that you're still in that battle is a lot easier said than done. Rosie will know, she's competed in many different title races. Ethan Fisher, fantastic player, one of the standouts of the division. One thing I think it's fair to say is that player of the season set to be announced at our end of season awards. There's any number of players that could grasp it. Whereas in years gone by, probably after game week 3 or 4, who's going to be in consideration. It's always typically Ed Common, Marcus Harrison, John Boulding. They're certainly the winners of the last 5, 6, 7 years. This season, it could go to any number of players. Ethan's one of them. Ollie Crawshaw's raised his levels, another in contention for young player of the season. But overall, it's just massive positives for me when it comes to Newcastle United Foundation. And assuming they're out of a title race, I think game week 5, they're going to be the great disruptors. They're going to be the ones that could probably dictate and determine the title.
They've got nothing to lose as well, so
they haven't.
The pressure's
they have
off them.
to go for it.
The pressure's off them, where the other teams, pressure's such a big thing. and the other teams that face them, I believe, is it yourselves, Aspire have them, and West Brom have them. Like the pressure is on them teams, where Newcastle and they're not going down. Granted, they're not going to win the league possibly, but they have no pressure on them, so they can do what they want and play with freedom, be as frustrating as they want to be, and it gets the other team worked up then. So yeah, I don't envy those who have to play Newcastle.
Rosie, Newcastle are, from the outside looking in, one of Aspire's most frustrating opponents, both in recent history and of games in the past. It's always a fiery challenge. It's always emotions typically boil over. There's cards, there's penalties, there's all sorts of drama when you're talking about Aspire and Newcastle United Foundation. We saw that in the 0-0 draw earlier in the season. From your perspective, is it, and you can open it up to other title challengers and contenders as well, is there any you prefer to play over the others? Because just referencing them Newcastle games, they're so fiery. I don't know if that's something you look for, you love, you thrive on, or it's something that really fragments momentum and tactics and the way that Aspire play.
It's good to have these games, like against Newcastle, West Brom, Teesside, even Leeds, ones that you can really get your teeth into, because, off the pitch, all the players are very friendly with one another, and you all have that banter, and it carries on into the game as well. I have to say, though, Ryan, you missed the disco that Newcastle brought for their games last weekend. Jamie Harrison and Rob Crawshaw brought a big boom box with flashing lights on it, rainbow flashing lights, and were playing music throughout the hall. It was brilliant. It set the vibes for the rest of the teams, and I hope they do it for the rest of the season.
They did it in Gameweek 3, albeit very briefly, because I was quick to run over to Jamie and say, if you don't turn that off, we're going to be struck off for copyright claims on YouTube. So that's probably why you're seeing them blast the music, because I wasn't there to tell him off. But they do bring an energy, don't they? And their dynamic warm-ups, and they're all over the place. It's a very methodical, strategic plan implemented by Jamie Harrison, who is one of the best coaches in the country, if not the world.
Like, for him, is through the roof. He's been in the England setup from the early days. He's been in Powerchair Football for as long as I can remember. He is an impeccable coach.
Yeah, I echo all of that, and you're seeing them play some really exciting football. And maybe we just need to cast our thoughts forward to next season now. They've taken a little bit of time to figure out the formula, the best system, the best tactics, and their utilisation of Cole Simpson. And Lee Armstrong is very much in that Jack Britton mould, one of the unsung heroes. It was the case following Game Week 3, and I think it is for Game Week 4 as well. Lee Armstrong yet to get a goal or assist, but you take him out of the squad, you take him out of the system, and it's nowhere near as effective as what we're seeing. They've got strength and depth now. Sam Smith and Aaron Guthrie raising their levels, as I've already mentioned. So they'll be the great disruptors. And I hope, to your point, Owen, that they do play without fear, without nerves. They can go and just end the season on their best possible high and see where that takes them. And if they're unable to secure the league, maybe another go at the cup. We saw them present in the 2022 cup final against yourselves.
Yes,
Rosie?
2023.
Yeah,
2023. So, and they brought the noise. They bring some incredible support. So in one sense, I do want them to progress through the cup competition because the support they bring. On the flip side, I'm not fussed about who's present in the cup final, but as long as you're bringing equivalent noise and support, Aspire always do it so fantastically at St George's Park. But that's why we go back to Derby on May the 11th, the quarter-final and semi-final showcase of the John Good Group WFA Cup. Free tickets, and I implore and encourage everyone to be a part of it, because it's going to be one of the best spectacles of the sport ever seen. So, halfway now, we should pick the pace up. We're now an hour and a half in. It's the same case with when I was recapping Game Week 3 with Greg. You can talk about Powerchair Football all day, and you kind of disregard the time on the clock. But I have to be a little bit more considerate of our listeners. So let's pick up the pace. Villa Rockets up next, in 6th in the standings. 18 games played, 23 points. There's a nice little pack in the middle. There's 3 distinct packs in the Premiership as a whole. You've got 1st down to 5th, who are maybe title contenders if you factor Newcastle into that. And then you've got what Greg deems the best of the rest between Villa, Sevenoaks and Greenbank. And after an additional game week, it's still only 2 points separating them. Rosie, give me your thoughts on Villa from Game Week 4 and them as a whole across the 24-25 campaign.
So Villa have had a mixed result of weekend, if I can get it up. Yeah, so Villa Rockets had a mixed results at the weekend. They had a draw and a loss on Sunday, and 1 win and a loss on Saturday. So you've picked up 4 points over the weekend out of a possible 12. Villa are a very good team. They're very defensive, and that's what gives them the best quality on the pitch, I believe. The thing is, if you look at the table from 6th to 12th, no one is mathematically safe. That last weekend, it boils down literally to the last games. Just between 6th and 10th, you've got 14 points. So any teams that are playing 5 games or 4 games could easily drop or overtake on results.
Yeah, Owen, give me your thoughts on Villa.
Again, is echoing what Rosie said. Like a little bit hit and miss in a way, really. To lose 1-0 to West Brom, but then draw 2-2 and struggle against Russell's is such a bizarre thing. But that's why we love football. Going back a couple of years ago, especially before the strike forces came into play, you knew what the results would be, kind of. Give or take 1 or 2 in the season, but not every game you're edgy and you're like, you know what, this could be an upset here. So, like, for Villa to absolutely take it to West Brom, the first team, and then, draw against the second team is slightly bizarre. We saw, I believe, a different side to Villa this weekend. I think the weekend previous was a little bit of a disappointment, but this weekend just been for Game Week 4. I think they were very good, very defensive, but very good. They've always been a defensive side, but I'm looking forward from a Teesside point of view as well to playing against them in the Cup at the Derby Arena.
Yeah, I think the same statement can be applied to several teams, but they're adapting to a whole different approach, tactics, player profiles, and that takes time. But we're seeing them as the season progresses get better and better.
Bobby Allen brought in Liam Lynch as well from over in Ireland.
The one I was going to go on to, obviously, Bobby Allen having his best goal scoring season in the Premiership, one of the brightest young prospects in the country. I don't think Hamza Midir was present in Game Week 4, so he's now missed 2 consecutive weekends of action in the 24-25 campaign, which is a real shame because he's one I regard as one of the best youngsters in the country, the same as Bobby Allen. Dave Lewis brings incredible experience, both from a playing and coaching point of view. So it's been a challenge for them to find a system that can accommodate all of these different player profiles and You've said how they're tough to break down. They're a defensive outfit, but I think they're going to try and change that narrative in the next season or two and break away from this defensive, stubborn outfit to one that can be more attacking, more proficient going forward. And there's no reason why they can't emulate what we've seen in Leeds Chariots and or Newcastle United Foundation. Just about getting through, never necessarily challenging towards the top, but maybe there's that trigger that then sees them go on to challenge towards the top of the division. It's something we reference. They're always hard to break down, but have never really troubled the teams above them. And as you said, Owen, Liam Lynch, one of several players from overseas competing in this season's National League, whether that's Premiership or Championship. He is a serious talent. And
incredible player.
You could forgive him for coming over to England and taking 2 or 3 weekends just to get up to the pace of play, the quality of opposition, the consistency that we have from top to bottom. But he hasn't looked out of place, and the same can be applied to the Donoghue brothers, Naglis Montvillas, and we'll shortly get on to Torbjorn Krop from Greenbank. From both of your perspectives, it must be nice to see this influx of international talent coming and enriching our game.
It is nice to see players from abroad coming over. It's nice for the camaraderie as well, especially the Donoghue brothers. They've been really, the family themselves have been very vocal, and they're very friendly as well. It's just nice to see other players coming in, taking an interest in the English style of play, especially if it's only just that in Scotland. The play just in between Scotland and England is completely different. So having players coming over to enrich our game as well just makes us look incredible. There's no other way to put it, really. It's the best league in the world.
Yeah, I think it's got dual purpose for them. They're going to come and test themselves and get greater exposure as players, but also best prepare themselves for the upcoming Euros, where they'll be representing their respective nations. On the case of Liam, Naglis, Tom and Sean, that's for the Republic of Ireland, and Torbjorn, that's Denmark. So it's amazing. Owen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what Rosie said a lot. The only concern is that I've got a little bit is the sort of, if we are signing, I know we've done very well in the rule of only signing one overseas player per club, but the only issue that I have is we've got good English players sat on the bench. Is it going to affect us in the long run with trophies, international trophies? I believe we're at a point where we play the best football internationally, and we have the best league in the world. However, what I don't want to get us to a stage of the international clubs benefiting more from us, taking our ideas a little bit, and our players not rotting on the bench but sitting there behind, and the international players getting picked over them. And I believe that it's a little bit heartbreaking when you've got players, and I know it's a long way to travel for players, but when players from England are training at week in, week out, and then you get a name coming over from abroad and getting in the squad over the person who's turning up week in, week out, it's a little bit difficult in my eyes, but I do like it. I like the camaraderie, a big word for me, Northerner, to say, but I do like everything that the internationals bring. I think they bring a wealth of experience with them, which could definitely be beneficial. But yeah, that is my only worry to it, and I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but that is my only issue.
No, I think you're absolutely right to raise that. As the sport continues to grow, it's important to strike the balance between welcoming the influx of international talent and safeguarding the development of English players. Yeah, of course. And whether that needs further assessment and or consideration going forward as we see the prevalence of international players increase is one for the WFA. The presence of overseas players definitely increases the overall standards, both in terms of the English game and the worldwide game, and brings fresh perspectives and new exposure and puts our sport and our league specifically out into new audiences. But as you rightfully say, we have to strike that balance and ensure that doesn't come at the expense of nurturing homegrown talent. So creating clear pathways, investing in youth development, ensuring opportunities at the top level for English Powerchair football players isn't disrupted. So there is a balance. I don't think we're quite there at the moment that it's of the detriment of English talent. I think our pathway is fully thriving, but as you said, it's definitely something that needs consideration. So you're not take the Premier League in the running game, for instance. International talent it dwarfs English talent, and that no doubt has probably had a detrimental effect on success at international level when it comes to England, because if you look at Man City all the way down to the teams towards the bottom, probably the lion's share of their players are that of internationals. So no, right to point it out, right to raise it as a potential concern. But I think at the moment we're in the sweet spot. We're benefiting from the influx of players, and they're benefiting both themselves and their respective nations. So no, it's a good talking point nonetheless. But yeah, Liam Lynch going back to Villa, really seamlessly integrated into life in England, will be present, no doubt, for the WFA Cup showcase. So we'll get to see him a few more times from now until the end of the season. So in 7th, we have Sevenoaks, 18 games played, 22 points. They sit a point behind Villa and a point above Greenbank. All have played 18. So that little race between them three is going to be really interesting. I think it's fair to say, whilst it may not be mathematically assured, that they won't be a threat from relegation. So it's just ensuring that they can end the season on the best possible finish, and building upon that success next year. Rosie, give me your thoughts on Sevenoaks.
Can I just say, Sevenoaks being 7th tickles me a bit. It just makes me happy. I don't know why.
Sounds nice, doesn't it? It just rolls off the tongue.
So we've got a mixed bag of results over the weekend for Sevenoaks. We've had 1 win and 4 losses, which I know they're going to be upset about. They're still adjusting to life without Greg and without Adam McAvoy. So I'd be honest, it was a surprise winning 3-1 over Sevenoaks in the last game week, as we played them in the cup and only won 1-0. So it felt like maybe their level has dropped slightly, and especially only winning 2-1 over Norwich. I'd expect more from Sevenoaks. I don't feel this weekend they tapped into their full potential.
No, there's multiple factors I think that need to be taken into consideration. They are, or have, the thinnest squad of any team in the National League, let alone the Premiership. For every weekend so far, they've only had 4 players present. So being able to produce consistently across 22 league games is a real challenge. So you have to commend them for the accumulation of points they have, despite that clear limitation. They've surpassed their points tally of 23-24. So 19 points they were able to get across their 22 league games last season. After 18 this season, they have 22. So a clear progression and a development from last season, and that takes into consideration the fact that they have seen the departures of Greg Baxter and Adam McAvoy, and don't underestimate the impact 2 presences and characters such as them will have on a side like Sevenoaks. So as mentioned, I think they're safe from any form or threat of relegation. So now, just like Newcastle, just like others in and around their pack, just playing without fear, experimenting, trialling things in game weeks 5, and then putting those things into practice next season with hopefully a slightly bolstered squad, because I don't think 4 players is sustainable. Obviously, within the rules and regulations, you're not allowed just 4. So they have different players affiliated to them who haven't been present. So it's encouraging signs, but maybe slight tales of slowing down as the season approaches the final weekend. Owen, give me your thoughts.
I was very impressed with them, to be honest. I watched a lot of the games, and I do have a little sweet spot for Sevenoaks. I like the lads that are there, and I like the coach, Ian. I think me and him get on quite well off the court. So I was impressed against West Brom with their game there, only losing 1-0 in the 38th minute or whatever it was. But yeah, like Rosie said, 1-0 in the cup. They seem to have been drawn against Aspire for the last sort of 3-4 years. So
it's never ending.
So it shows progression, I think. And big boots to fill was Greg Baxter leaving and Adam McAvoy leaving, and I know yourself is a small bit affiliated, Ryan, to Sevenoaks, but I believe that they saved the best weekend or best performances to when you weren't there, mate. So maybe you're the issue.
I used to live in Sevenoaks, and when I was first introduced to the sport, they very much took me under their wing. So very much a soft spot for them. And as you said, I've been really impressed with them this season. There was a lot of question marks prior to the season kicking off, how they would adapt. Bear in mind they secured safety last season, but they needed game weeks 4 and 5 to do so. So taking Adam and Greg out of that equation, I very much expected, to do their players no disservice, that they would be in and amongst a fight for survival. But they've proved me wrong. The consistency, the chemistry amongst their 4 players has been fantastic. I think Kyle Alexander and James Mason, as kind of a 1-2 pivot, have a really good understanding of each other's games now, which has taken a few years to cultivate. And then their wide wing players in Miles Miller and Harry Bestwick producing numbers that consistently that they haven't in seasons gone by. So for me, it's nothing but positive. They're going to need to reinforce in the off season, and before that, just try and end the season on a high, because they have a fairly favourable fixture list, relatively speaking. Rosie?
I think Sevenoaks would benefit from an overseas player. I really do. Like you said, 4 players is not sustainable, and to me, I don't know, it just feels like they're missing something in their team, and I feel an overseas player would just benefit them so much. They'd be given, a break on the bench for 5 or 10 minutes. They could rotate it around.
Geographically, Sevenoaks is quite cushy.
You're probably about 35 minutes away from Gatwick.
Yeah.
So, again, we're getting into a narrative and a conversation that slightly contradicts what we was talking a minute ago, because bringing in an overseas player would limit the numbers of one of their English talents. We don't necessarily want to resort to saying international players, because I cannot even wrap my head around the logistics and the cost considerations of players coming over.
But
I know
also having a disability is so difficult to travel. Of course. So
and
hats off to those who do it.
That's assuming players come over on a plane. I think it's a little bit more favourable for the Republic of Ireland internationals, who can jump on a cruise over the
spoke to the Donahers. It is very expensive. I'd looked at myself to go over, and it is just an impeccable amount of money.
And that's why I think we've got the balance okay at the moment, because whilst it's absolutely incredible to watch these players who I've watched on the international stage for many years come and test their ability in England, sadly with where the sport is currently, it's not sustainable to have that outlay and that expense every time you want to compete. So like Valentino Zegarelli last year, amazing having him over, but the cost is too great for what you get back. So it wouldn't surprise me if the internationals we're seeing in the league this season is a result of the upcoming Euros, to make sure that they are in the best possible form and are best prepared to ensure that their nations benefit. But long term, it would take a huge effort and a lot of money to consistently play football in England. So we'll see how it goes. But either way, they are enhancing the reputation of our division, and I think it's testament to the sport in England that players want to come to us and test their ability in England, because we must be doing something right if they're seeking those opportunities irrelevant of cost. But no, back to Sevenoaks, fantastic season. They play 3 of their 4 opponents in Game Weeks 5 are placed below them in the league standings. So they will want to enhance their current 22-point accumulation and look for probably their highest placement within the Premiership in the club's history. But either way, congratulations to them, and we'll see how they fare. Next in the standings, I'm sure we've got a few talking points when it comes to Greenbank. One of the biggest points of interest when you're looking at the division due to the recent influx of transfers. They've played 18 games, sit on 21 points, so at the bottom of that middle pack, but they have the players, the personnel, the quality to really challenge, whether that's Game Weeks 5 or next season, assuming that they can keep their talented players on board. Owen, give me your thoughts on Greenbank from Game Week 4.
It was interesting because obviously we know Game Week 3 Marcus Harrison was absent because of the sustained ankle injury that he got. But it was good to see him back and fighting at the top level of his game. He did make an appearance against in the cup, so we knew he was fit and that he was back to it. But to be helped along by Tobias, is it Tobias? Is that right? Toby, yeah. And obviously Toby's brother, is it? Who's helped coach them with his wealth of experience as Denmark coach. It's been quite a nice little mixture, I think. I'd have liked to have seen Greenbank maybe push a little bit higher up the table. I think as a squad with individuals, they're a little bit better than what the league position says. So I am shocked to see them down there, but they have took points off the top teams, narrowly missing out by for Newcastle. They took points off West Brom earlier on in the season, but then you look on the flip side and they drew 0-0 with Middlesbrough, which is a much needed point and could be the point that keeps Borough up at the end of the season. So it's such an odd team. I can't quite get my head around why, but I'm quite impressed with how Greenbank have gone this season.
There's a few factors I think that need to be referenced. Marcus not being present during Game Week 3 really halted their momentum, and this is one of the best players in the world. You remove that to any team, there's huge detrimental impacts. You add a Marcus quality player to any team, it automatically transforms them. So that needs to be taken into consideration. But it's a big shift, it's a big change for Greenbank, and let's not forget, this is a team that was competing in the Championship last season, and whilst we're quick to skew our expectations because of Marcus being acquired, ultimately, if you come up from the division below, the ultimate ambition, the primary objective, surely just needs to be maintaining survival and then building upon that. It's chemistry that they're starting to create, they're starting to establish amongst their players, and new signings, Torbjorn Krop, Liam Fitzpatrick, Marcus Harrison, they are really starting to find a new gear now. And I think, we said it at the start of the season, from a personnel point of view, they should challenge towards the top. It hasn't quite materialised that way, but I have no doubt if they keep their players, they continue their current trajectory, they will be in consideration next season. Don't you think, Rosie?
I do. I've got a soft spot for Greenbank. My best mate plays there, but I was commentating a lot of their games throughout the season and over the weekend, and I have to give a shout out to Liam Fitzpatrick. What a player.
Yeah. Consistently
scoring, setting up other goals for other players. He's just really hit his, well, not even his full potential. He's even growing towards his full potential. The mentorship from Marcus Harrison is really helping these other players in Greenbank. And I commend Marcus so highly for going back to Greenbank from a team that has won everything domestically. It's just, I love Greenbank, honestly.
No, I share that sentiment. And on the topic of Marcus, obviously we reference him and talk about how he's a leading player in the world. I don't think his coaching ability quite gets the spotlight it needs. He's such an influential coach that's guiding these players, guiding this team, and it shows a selflessness that not a lot of people have. If you're competing at the top, you're picking up medals, silverwares, awards year on year, it's hard to ever dip below that or aspire to have anything below that. Marcus took a huge step down, relatively speaking, from West Brom to a recently promoted side. Of course, he has affiliations and ties to Greenbank prior to that, but it shows how selfless he is to do that, and developing players such as Liam Fitzpatrick, Jacob Book-Platt, another one of the country's brightest young prospects. It enhances the game, and him doing that needs so much credit. Fantastic coach, fantastic player, and as mentioned, I think if he can continue working miracles with them, they will be in consideration next season. I have no question. No matter what side Marcus competes for, they're a challenger. You add a nice cohesive squad around him, there's no telling what they can achieve. Next in the standings, we have West Bromwich Albion Throstles. Really keen to get both of your thoughts on Throstles, because a huge influx of new players. I think 4 or 5 of their players joining them in the off-season. Only Amy Wharton and Jonathan Davis, I believe, were present last season. So that in itself is a huge switch up. And added to that, the new coaching setup. Colin Gordon now taking the reins. And it maybe has taken a little bit longer than he expected to get his ideas across, implement his tactics, his philosophy, which we know can be successful if you have the right players. Is this a case of it taking time and just wait to reap the rewards, or are they going to have to shift it in game week 5 just to try and guarantee survival, because they're right in that mix towards the bottom?
Throstle don't deserve to be in that bottom part of the area of the table. They have worked so incredibly hard, and I know Colin Gordon, it's actually very nice to see him back in, the league. I think it's just taken a bit longer for those ideas to come across, but also, like you said, so many players have transferred in to Throstle this season. They've got to learn how to gel. They've got to learn how to get on each other's wavelength to be able to play harmoniously and then take on those ideas from Colin Gordon. So I think it's a mixed bag of stuff, but I hope they can survive this season.
Yeah, I mean, 9th, 10th and 11th. Throstle's, Nottingham, Middlesbrough. Just a point separates them. And let's assume, that Norwich will be relegated, having only 1 point across their 18 games. That 11th spot, which results in automatic relegation to the Championship, will be so intriguing to see who claws their way out of that, because there's positives to each of those sides. Throssell's, from watching them, I know that they can play some really exciting, expansive football. The end product, however, has just been lacking. And when you're referencing their final 4 games, it's tough. They've got games against Sevenoaks, they've got games against Middlesbrough on the Saturday, where they're going to have to try and secure some points, because on Sunday they place Teesside and Newcastle, who, relatively speaking, are both within contention for the title. So it has to be that Saturday that they channel all their energy, all of their efforts, and hopefully for them find enough points and success to ensure that come season's end they're clear of the relegation as 1 point, but if and where possible that 10th place playoff as well, because the precedent has been set by Norwich City, who was successful last season, and as we said at the top, Teesside Steel, and we've referenced Villa Rockets Lions, are fighting it out currently in the Championship for that 3rd place position. You could see them have success in a fixture such as the playoff, wouldn't you say, Owen?
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be not nice to see. Well, I mean, it's not nice to see any team go down. But for Throssell's, it'll be quite gut wrenching, because they've got the players there that deserve to be in the Premiership, and it's hard because when teams are set up like sort of B teams, shall we say, as feeder clubs, feeder to the main teams, that is what you expect. It is, soon as you start doing better as an individual, you get took up to the top team, and it's a forever cycle of the B team gets players in, they get better, they go up. B team gets players in, so on, so on. So it is difficult, because it's at the end of the day, they're still a club, they're still a team in this league. So to see that, but however, I do agree with that's how football should be, and I believe that if we, I don't know if the WFA implemented a rule where you couldn't have a B team in that league and it had to be in a different league, then there'd be no scope, because the Championship, although yes, I said before, the gap is tightening up, the is no scope for improving as much and feeding into that A team as much. So for me, I believe Throssell's do deserve to stay up. I'd like to echo what Rosie said about Colin coming back into the mix with everything. It's great to see him. He's a character, isn't he? So if nothing else, he is such a good character to have around, and it's nice to see him taking on a different challenge with different players. That and we say this word a little bit, elite. They're not elite players, but he's took on this challenge to make them into better players. And yes, it is taking time, but I believe they are getting there, and they have got scope to get up some points on at least a Saturday, and hopefully take points off top of the top pack.
Yeah, I coach on the Regional Emergent Talent Programme, and I have there's clear distinctions between what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. Having never played the sport of Powerchair Football, I can't even begin to talk from a player's perspective, but I really like raw, impressionable, mouldable players. And he's worked with England. He's already working with the best, the world-class level, some of the best players that have ever graced a Powerchair Football court, let alone that are currently playing. So it must be a rewarding challenge for him to go in and have these really attentive, impressionable players that clearly want to learn, want to get better, and should they maintain Premiership survival, they could be one to watch next season, assuming Colin stays there, because a season of adversity under your belt, overcoming that, could really build bridges and really enhance chemistry amongst one another.
I don't have Sorry, Ryan. Go on, you go.
I was just going to say, we go back to the point of saying that six of their players are new signings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And adapting to that in itself is a huge challenge, because each of them players are trying to learn how each other play, how to best complement them. They're being experimented in different positions and different tactics. So that in itself is one huge element, let alone the expectations and the philosophy that Colin wants to introduce. So I think it's one we just have to be patient with. And if you look at the fixtures, they have tough fixtures left, and certainly when you're looking at teams in and around that race for survival, I think Middlesbrough probably have the best fixture list on paper. In game week 5 they play Greenbank, Throssels, Norwich and Sevenoaks, so relatively speaking Throssels have it all to do, but I have no doubt that they will unlock the formula eventually, whether that's in the Premiership or the Championship, because I could see positives if they were to go down, really start to nail their ideas and their philosophy in the division below, where there's a little bit more freedom. There's the talent isn't quite what it is in the Premiership, and then hoping they get promoted, bring them ideas, bring that philosophy, bring that experience back to the top division.
Whoever goes down, they're going to be an absolute credit to the Championship. Regardless of who it is. What I was about to say, I don't have the stats to hand, but to me, Throssels seem quite a young squad. You might know more than what I do, Rye, but they seem quite a young squad too. And another thing that I was going to say is, a lot of them have never played Premiership football before this season, so they've either come from the Championship or sort of been around the bottom of the Premiership. So for them to do anything better is going to be a challenge for them. But I believe they sort of don't deserve to be where they are.
No, I completely agree. I don't think they're near kind of the average age. I think if you look at their players, Amy Wharton, Jonathan Davis, Matthew Harrison, that they've been playing for a long time. They've obviously brought in Regan Kemp and Parth Gackwad, Abigail Bolt and Amy Lee Julian. So it's a mixed group in terms of age, in terms of experience, and trying to find the best formula to complement their style of play. It is proven a challenge, but one that I think will reap rewards if they stick with it long enough. I'm not sure if either you two can reference, certainly was the case in game week 3, that they changed their complete outfield squad each half that they played, which shows that Colin's still trying to find the best starting four, the best system to accommodate the talent that he clearly has. But game week 5 will be the one. Mm-hmm. It will be the one. And I'm sure Rosie can attest. The reason I've got a soft spot for Throssels is the prevalence of female players. They have more female players in their squad than any other within the National League. And that is something we need to celebrate, we need to shout about. So, yeah, exactly. Obviously, we're working behind the scenes to really boost and enhance the exposure of female players. Obviously, you're a key driver in that, Rosie, as is Ellie Curran. So that's the case study. We want to be showing people Throssels of what's possible, and that's in a way one of the reasons why I want to ensure that they stay in the Premiership, because they deserve to be there. And the players that we're referencing in Amy Wharton, Amy Lee Julian and Abigail Bolt, there's some incredibly talented players that are Premiership quality. There's no question about it. So we go on to 10th in the division now, Nottinghamshire, very close at the bottom. 18 games played, 9 points to their name. I think you've already referenced them, Owen, about that Teesside game and how close it was. I think beyond that 4-0 defeat to Aspire, which I'm sure Rosie can talk about in more detail, their results show they are fighting, and if they're not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, they're definitely fighting. But again, like you mentioned about Twassels, if they go down, it's not the end of the world. It's a chance for them to build the way back up. They've been sort of threatening it a little bit with the results. I know one year I believe they finished 4th, not an awful long time ago, sort of 2017, 2018 was it?
Much sooner than that.
I think
it was 21, 22.
I forget what year we're in, to be fair, but the COVID mucked it all up a little bit. But so
I think importantly on that point, it's with pretty much the same core of players that they've currently got. I know they missed Adam Langley for, I think, about 18 months, and that really affected them. But they have quality there.
They do.
To challenge.
And they're a frustrating team to play against, which to break them down is very difficult, which is where, if they are that third team in the playoff, it's where whoever plays them, whether it be Steel or whether it be Villa Rocket Lions, will struggle to break them down because they're that used to defending against the likes of Teesside, Aspire, West Brom, Newcastle. They've been doing that for, 24, 23, 22 games this season. So they're going to struggle to break them down defensively. Where they do lack is in attack. Grabbing a goal against Teesside is fantastic for them because it shows that they came out fighting a lot more. And the second half was very good for Nottingham. But like I said before, if they do end up going down, whoever it is will be a massive credit to the Championship.
Rosie, your thoughts on Nottingham?
Do you know what? Nottingham is another team that I really like. I spoke about it before when you've got Adam and Sam on the pitch together, the twinergy. I
like that.
Thank you. It just sparks the pitch because they know what each other is doing. They've been together 27 years of their lives. They know what each other is doing. They know what each other's capable of. They know each other's move. It really helps them on the pitch. If I was in charge of Nottingham, which I'm not, I would keep those two on the pitch as much as possible because they are the best attacking force, I believe, in the team. But Nottingham are struggling without an official coach. Things are a little bit trying to think the word, hang on. Things are challenging at the minute with Nottingham, especially in the background, so I hope if they do stay up in the Premier League that they over the summer can rebuild in some areas, or even if they get relegated they can rebuild twice as stronger.
Yeah, they have a real solid core of players. We spoke about the twinergy of Adam and Sam Langley. I think Matthew Hadfield is one of my favourite players in the division, and his utilisation, I think towards the latter stages of the season they're trying to experiment with him more. Obviously, typically a very reserved goalkeeper for Nottinghamshire. Within recent games they're trying to use his skill set in attacking phases of the court, which is really promising to see. Whether that's a little bit too late, we will see at the conclusion of Gameweek 5. But I think if they can just keep that core of players, irrelevant of what division they're in, that will really aid their performances in the long term. And don't underestimate what stability can do for a team. Irrelevant of who we're referencing, having something to build upon. Leeds are the perfect example for that. Keeping a solid cohort of players, not looking to bring players in or players to leave, and how once you understand that you establish that shared chemistry, what is possible. And Nottinghamshire have the potential. We've already referenced how competitive they were in 21-22, and in that season I believe it took Northern Thunder the final weekend to trump them. So they very much had a third place finish. And Matthew Hadfield, Adam Langley and Sam Langley were at the core of that spine. So game week 5 for them, challenging. They played Leeds, they played West Brom, they played Newcastle in consecutive games. So if they're unable to secure any points from that, it's probably going to come down to that final showdown against Norwich on Sunday afternoon to see whether or not they'll be playing their football in the Premiership or Championship. But as it stands, they are safe from relegation just based on that goal difference alone, and why goal difference could play such a key factor in the placements both at the top and the bottom. And for that, it nicely brings us on to Middlesbrough, the penultimate team in the division, in 11th. So as it stands, they will be automatically relegated. But even from afar, watching the streams and tracking results on the Scoreline app, they are demonstrating clear progressions. They are settling into the division, and I would almost say don't let results or point accumulation deceive you, because they are a very exciting outfit.
I was very impressed with them last weekend. Obviously been in and around the Borough setup and knew that they would be competitive when they came up, but when they first game, which I think was first game of the weekend if I remember rightly, or second game of the weekend, was against West Brom, they could have been 3-1 up at half time, and for that, was incredible. Umar Hanif, what a player, what a young player, to come after his back surgery was it last season or season before, he's come on leaps and bounds, and the main bulk of the squad changes slightly. I'm very impressed and so glad not for just the player, but for the nation of Scotland to see Galloway come up. Ethan Galloway come down to England and plays football here in England as well as in Scotland, which I absolutely love him. I think he's fantastic. I think his family is great. His mum obviously does the refereeing in Scotland, and she's the head ref up there. She's fantastic. He was itching to get to England, but obviously he was at that age of exams and school and everything, where it's a little bit more difficult to just get in the car and travel 4 or 5 hours to another country and play your football. But and obviously his parents working was difficult, so now they've sort of got a little bit more time. They were explaining to me at the weekend, and I hope they don't mind disclosing that, but they've got a little bit more time, and I think that'll bring him on, but it'll also bring the country of Scotland on development wise, because he is an absolute brain box of Powerchair football at a young age. For me, I'm absolutely delighted that he's come to England to play his football, because for me he's one of the best performers at this level, and definitely in Scotland.
I echo that completely. I've known the Galloway family for several years, having commentated at several European competitions, whether that's Home Nations or European qualifiers. And I apologise for not referencing him sooner when we was talking about the Irish players and Toby from Denmark. Of course, Ethan committing a lot of money, effort, energy to testing his ability in England. And I know it's always been an aspiration of him, even back in 2022 when I first met him, how he would have loved to come down and test his ability. He's now doing that, and he's enriching the league, he's enriching Middlesbrough, and played a key part he was very close to being present in the team of the weekend.
Doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't at all. And again, that's testament to him as an individual and the level that he shows, that he's not thwarted by it's fair to say it could be intimidating, the National League coming for the first time, the consistency of talent and the level of competition. He rose to that level, and you're right to reference and talk about how much of a brain box he is, and the innovations he has with 3D printing or development of games, etc. So, no, great to see him. And just on the topic of Middlesbrough, they have a favourable fixture list in Game Week 5, and if they continue to produce the levels that we saw in Game Week 4, I probably have them the favourites to stay up. That's a big hypothetical, but I think the chemistry that James found and Umar Hanif, who are both voted the unsung hero of the weekend, produced across Game Week 4, if they can replicate that with the addition of Ethan Galloway and the experience of Kath McNichol, that they're in for a real shout. And I have no doubt, if you asked them at the start of the season, would you take Premiership survival and nothing else, they would have snapped your hand off. Wouldn't you agree, Rosie?
I agree. Middlesbrough are very strong in attack and defence. They just sometimes fail to get it into that last step again in the back of the net. But they have been really challenging to play against this season, and they have made such an incredible effort. It's, and every team has to be on that table, and it doesn't matter where you are on that table, but Middlesbrough are an incredible team, and I'm disappointed to see them be relegated if they don't survive, because I love the energy Carolyn brings on the sideline. She's really energetic and encourages the players quite a lot. It's very tight at that bottom at the minute.
No, it is, but that's what makes it so compelling. Whether you're tracking the race at the top or the bottom, the story is still to be told, and they still have the ability to influence their results and hopefully guide themselves to safety. And that brings us nicely onto the final team in the 12-team division, Norwich City. I can see Rosie's face, having such a strong affiliation and love for Norwich City, how difficult it is from a competition point of view. But I have to emphasise it was an unprecedented achievement for them to even be here. So ultimately, for me, from the outside looking in, I would just implore them to take the positives, take the experience, take the learnings from the 24-25 season, and ensure that they build upon it. But don't you think, Rosie?
I'm gutted for them. I really am gutted for them. Like you said, last season it was extremely challenging to even get to third place. When we got to third place, we didn't even realise until I think the day after. So winning the playoff as well, we didn't ever think of doing it. We just went into the game going, it is what it is. If we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. I'm gutted I can't be there to help coach. Norwich are going through quite a challenging time behind closed doors as well, with coaches leaving and coming in, coaches learning the game as well. So it's very challenging as well, especially with players in that squad are wanting to achieve even higher than just getting into the Premiership. Players are wanting to transfer and join other teams and really find their sweet spot in the sport. And I'm just gutted that they are sitting at the bottom of the table, but they should be so incredibly proud of themselves. They've kept their heads up high. They've been a real testament to themselves. And they've, one of the weekends, they didn't even have Mike Coleman, which is one of their most integral centre players. They have done really, really well. I'm very, very proud of them no matter what. No,
well said. Anything to add, Owen?
No, yeah, they're great on and off the pitch. The signing of, I know Rosie had mentioned the Donahue family. Donahue. The coming over, the family are brilliant. absolutely adore them. I think they're fantastic. And Mike's mum dedicates a lot of time to football, and as does Mike. They're all down to earth, you know. They're not the noisiest of bunch, but they go under the radar a lot, and it is a massive shame to see them with only the 1 point. I just hope they can get a win, so it's something to celebrate this season. At the fifth time of asking, so I think I really hope they do. I think that's on my second hopefulness for winning the league this season. So next weekend I'll have a list of priorities, and that will be up there. But yeah, I think I'm slightly gutted that Norwich haven't performed as well. But like Rosie said, they haven't had it easy with Mike being unavailable for the first weekend. Was quite a crusher, really.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? When you reference the fixtures that they have in game week 5, they start Saturday with Newcastle United and Villa Rockets. So them results could almost certainly condemn them to the Championship for next season. And then the Sunday is going to be really interesting, because whilst Norwich are likely to already be relegated then, they played Middlesbrough and Nottinghamshire, who are fighting for survival, and it's still very much in the balance. So I think it could be an interesting dynamic where we see we see Middlesbrough and Nottinghamshire really take the game to Norwich, and that's where we might see a little bit of success.
Well, we see that in the running game so much, don't we? When teams get relegated and they start to nick points off whoever's going up or whatever, because the pressure's off. I said it before about Newcastle, the pressure's gone, so enjoy it. Go out there and enjoy it.
Exactly. So I'm almost looking forward to those games to see what the potential outcome is. Just referencing the prior matchups, I know that Middlesbrough-Norwich game early in the season was a real cracker, a real great game for which Norwich went 1-0 up in. So they have the ability. And Middlesbrough and Nottinghamshire need points. So if that ultimately means that they have to take the game to Norwich, hopefully that they will get that win under their belts, because that will be the perfect way to cap off what has been a challenging season.
Yeah.
But it's about focusing on the positives, not the negatives. They were it's a credible achievement for them to even be here. We have to keep re-emphasising that. So if and where you can, take the positives and take them into next season. But I think that concludes a fantastic recap of Game Week 4 of the 24-25 Optegra Premiership, with just one weekend left to play. The pressure is on. Every point, every goal, every moment, the title race, the final standings, the fight for survival, it's all hanging in the balance, so the drama is far from over. Thank you to MK Battery for their continued support of the podcast and their wider commitment to the Powerchair Football community. And we will be back, no doubt, with another episode in the coming days. Thank you, Owen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.